everybody, and welcome back to the I Don't Know Running podcast, where we share our experiences that make running fun and sometimes not so fun. I'm Lewis, and I'm a self-admitted, I don't even know anymore, lazy ultra runner, kind of still, maybe?
I don't know. After a certain amount of time, can you say a runner anymore?
It hasn't even been a year. I just ran a half in February.
True, on zero training.
Yeah.
Your training was 4 miles the night before, which was also a race.
I'm basically trained up right now for
You're
anything.
ready for a marathon?
On
Sunday then.
No, I don't think so.
Oh, well, I'm Mitch. I'm just out to lunch.
You are, yeah. We have a little bit different setup today. Because of some things that have happened in my life, we're actually able to commandeer Mitch's lunch hour and have him come over and record a podcast. I don't know that this is going to be a regular thing, but it works out. And it works out because we have a guest joining us today from Colorado. Brandy Loseke is joining us from Colorado.
Colorado Springs,
to be more specific, where we have some friends.
Yeah.
Out there, a couple of very close friends from the West Michigan area and some people that we know outside of that now because of them.
We haven't had either one of them on really yet, Laura and Jack.
That's true.
Maybe someday.
Yeah.
Jack's got to start running again.
Him and I, we could have a podcast all by ourselves.
I think he's run less than you. Welcome, Brandy.
Yeah, but welcome, Brandy, to the podcast.
Hello. Hi, guys.
Super. So we initially were going to talk to Brandy back when we did just a couple weeks ago when we did the kidney donor athlete discussion. Well, kidney donor discussion, and Tracy with who is the founder of Kidney Donor Athlete was on, as well as PA Kidney Donor. So, but the schedules just didn't line up, and so we still wanted to talk to Brandy. And as it turns out, it's really good because a lot of like the things that we talked about talking to Brandy about would have kind of just been its own episode anyway. So this works out.
Yep, for sure.
So Brandy, let's just start with let's start with where we start every episode of the I Don't Know Running podcast when we have a guest on. And that is, what got you into endurance sports in the first place? Like, where did that start?
Well, I ran as a kid. My dad was a youth track and field and cross country coach, and I ran throughout my youth and took some time off in my 20s. And what really got me back into it was my son was born and he had colic, and the only thing that would make him stop crying was to be outside. And so I just started running. And on top of that, my only away from family and the crying and everything was to go running. And so I just started running again, and I got further and further, and I fell in love with the longer distances, and entered into my first half marathon. And it's been history since then. Just fell in love with half marathons and marathons. And it's my therapy. It's my happy place. It's my joy. So that's how it all started, is a crying baby, really.
So we didn't talk about this before, but you and your husband both run. So you have to kind of tag team as far as that goes sometimes with kids and that kind of thing.
Yes. And my husband is an ultra runner. He's actually training for a 100-miler right now. So that gets a little tricky. We have to talk about which races we're going to do and who's going to be able to train.
Yeah. Two things come to mind. Number one, I guess I would say you're an ultra runner too. You did do rim to rim to rim, which we will talk about a little bit later. I mean, that does count. And what 100-miler is he training for?
Bighorn up in Wyoming.
Yeah.
Wow.
I've heard that can be brutal.
And
yes.
When is that?
I think that's why he likes it.
It's either soon or it's in the fall.
It's soon. It's June 17th.
Yeah, and the weather can be bad. Like I'm trying to think. Yeah. I had a friend that went out there to do that, and I want to say they either ended up canceling because of weather, which is really rare in ultras, or the 90% of the field did not finish because of the weather. It was rain sleet, snow, through especially some of the higher parts of that race. And so, yeah, I that one can be tough. Is there any forecast right now for that?
Well, Wyoming's had one of the largest, if not the largest, snowpacks ever this past season. And the snow right now is in areas like up to about waist deep.
Oh boy!
So it's gonna be a brutal one for sure. He's got his work cut out for it.
Are you going to crew or anything like that then as well?
I was hoping to crew. I wanted to run the last 18 miles with him, but because of my most recent injury, I'm not able to. But I am going to be there for the finish. The kids and I are going to be there for the finish.
Awesome. Is this his first 100?
It is.
Oh boy, he picked a tough one.
Nothing like
goodness
jumping in with both feet.
Wow.
I was hoping it was a little bit later because I was going to be like, Lewis, maybe you could train for that. But
right.
I mean, you got a month. You're good.
Yeah, it should be good.
That's plenty of time.
Yeah, totally. Well, that is not. We did not ask Brandy on to talk about her husband and his adventures. We want to talk to Brandy. So I'm curious, only because when Tracy talked about like where she is at with her running, are you one of those that since you've gotten back into it, and it sounds to me like it's your happy space, it's your peace, it's your freedom, are you a technology geek or do you appreciate and wear the technology, or are you one of those that wants to go out without the watch on and just enjoy a 1 hour run or whatever, or which are you?
I think I am both. We are so blessed here in Colorado Springs with some of the most amazing trail systems and mountain ranges. I do like to get out there and get kind of lost for a little bit, but I also am a disciplined road runner. And I rely on my watch a lot to tell me about my pace and my intervals. So I think I'm more of a technology geek, I guess.
I think if I was out west, not in the Midwest, even if I was in any area that had mountainous trails, I think I would be a 50-50 also.
What I noticed about people that live out west, though, is everybody talks about gain. We don't talk about gain here because there's no gain. It's flat.
Yeah, we do not get that here.
But on the road, I'm sure if you're training on the road, you still have to, you're right below Pikes Peak. It's not necessarily hilly on the roads, but you still
deal with the elevation.
You're still at elevation. So you probably try to pick areas where it's not crazy hilly, is my assumption.
Yes, there's about maybe 2 places here in town where you can get a relatively flat training area, but most everywhere here is it's up and down. You just have to get used to it.
Yeah, that's not here. My route, I think it changes maybe 50 feet over the whole route.
Yeah, you have to find specific routes like Upper Mac. It only has any type of elevation because you're constantly running up and down.
Doing the whoops.
Just doing whoops. That's our elevation gain.
Yeah.
But it does make you a strong runner. I do really believe that really strengthens you as a runner. But hey, let's jump back into kidney donation, which we talked about a couple weeks ago. I think some of the things that we did talk about on that is still boggled my mind. As I was editing that podcast and getting ready to, put it out there the next day, it still just stood on, or what really impacted me was the 100,000 people that are basically approved for and ready for a kidney. And when you look at what the impact of kidney donation, well, I hope that it still is the case when we get done talking to Brandy, is that it's almost nothing. It almost doesn't affect you whatsoever once you get through the recovery period, which is relatively short, as Pete, at least for some people. Now, obviously, everybody's going to vary a little bit, but Pete ran a marathon, what was it, within 30 days or 60 at least, or at most. It was at most 60 days after kidney donation. So, Brandy, let's just throw all that on you and just say, what was the process like leading up to? Well, first, let's start with why. Why did you choose to donate a kidney? And then let's jump into the process of that and your post-recovery, when you were able to start running again.
Okay. I have a cousin. He's actually my dad's cousin, first cousin, and he served in the Gulf War. And when I was a kid, I used to write him every week. He was my hero. I thought it was so amazing that he was fighting for our country. And in 2016, I saw a post on Facebook, or 2015, I'm sorry. I saw a post on Facebook from his sister saying that he was very sick and was in need of a kidney. And I had no idea about this. And without hesitation, I looked at my husband and he was like, "You're doing this, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes, I am. I'm going to see I didn't know anything about living donation, to be honest. I had no idea what that looked like. I had never met another living donor. So I called the hospital and we got set up. I knew I was really healthy, and got through. There's a ton of testing, lots and lots of testing, lots of blood work. And if you really want to know how healthy or not healthy you are, sign up to be a living donor, because everything is tested. Absolutely everything. And my cousin did not want to know who the kidney was coming from. So this entire process, he had no idea it was me that was going through all of the testing. Wow. So it was relatively quick. I found out in October of 2015 he was sick. I was approved and ready to go by January 2016. But my cousin, he went through a lot of health issues during that time. So we would set up a date and he would get sick. And so then they weren't able to do the surgery. And when I was in Albuquerque at the time, he was in Colorado. And when you're trying to coordinate all these different moving parts, surgeons, nurses, surgery centers, all of those parts have to come together. And then they found out that my kidney, or they didn't find out, they knew this, but they presented me with, my kidney was about half the size that they would want for my cousin. And so they asked if I would be willing to enter into the SWAP program, which is I would agree to donate to a stranger while another person would donate to my cousin. And we would still be able, he would be shot to the top of the list, essentially. And they would try to get the surgeries done on the same day. And so I said, yes, absolutely, I will do that. And so my kidney was going to go to a person, now I know is a woman in New York. And my cousin received a kidney from an altruistic donor. And in July of 2016, we had our July of 2016, we all had our surgeries. My kidney flew off to New York. And my cousin got his in Denver. And that's such a condensed story of everything that happened.
I'm sure, yeah.
But it was so amazing how everything had to come together. My surgery had to be at 5:30 p.m. so that the kidney wasn't on ice for longer than 12 hours to get to the gal in New York, because if it was, then it wouldn't be viable anymore. And so I really fell in love with this process because I thought it was so amazing what modern medicine has done for us, like what is capable. Was I scared? Yes, because at the time my son was only 2.5, and the recovery was a little daunting for me because I had never had a surgery before, other than just having children. But it was seamless. It really was seamless. We went in, we had our surgeries. I saw my cousin the very next morning, and he was and when he found out it was me, he couldn't believe it was me that had done that. The little girl that used to write him letters,
wow.
thanking him for being a soldier. But he was a different human. He looked different. He walked into my room while I was laying in a hospital bed, and that was incredible. It brought tears to my eyes. And just to see somebody that was so sick doing so wonderfully. And during that time, I had taken him to his dialysis appointments, and that was heart-wrenching. That is not an easy process. And when you say dialysis and they get to just sit in a chair, that's not what it is. It's so hard on their bodies and hard for them mentally and physically. And so to see him walk into my hospital room was amazing. Absolutely amazing.
So a couple of questions come to mind. Boy. So number one, the process. So did you end up donating your kidney in Albuquerque, or did you end up going to Colorado still then to do the surgery?
I drove up to Colorado to have the surgery done, and we had it done in the same hospital.
Okay. Because I was thinking because yours ended up going to New York, I was like, well, did you end up doing it at home? And then, so this is a question I thought of, and maybe you know the answer to this, maybe you don't. We have 2 kidneys. Mm-hmm. I'm right. Okay, right. Just making sure. I didn't look this up. But most people, you give up a kidney. What happens if your remaining one goes bad?
So when you enter into, now this is my experience, the rules may have changed, but since I have donated my kidney, if something were to happen to my other one and it went into failure, I would move to the top of the donor list. That's
what I was wondering. I thought, man, it's exactly what I was thinking. I thought, man, if you donate a kidney, you should be top of the list if anything were to happen. And that's awesome. That is so great to hear.
That helps make a decision.
Yeah.
So for how long before you actually donated your kidney did he find out that it was you that was going to help him?
It was just a few months. Just a couple months.
Because you tried it, you didn't tell him. You just kept it quiet and just respected what he...
And I didn't... Yeah, I posted my journey on social media, but not until I kept everything. I took videos and pictures, and it wasn't until he knew it was me. Then I started to present my journey on social media.
Okay.
Gotcha. So... yeah. So number one, just thank you for doing that. I think that's amazing. And to continue to, like, I didn't even think about the process of, well, your kidney it's not big enough. I didn't even think about that. So I think I think it really is amazing that they have that like train thing or whatever. I don't know what you said it was. The share thing. Swap. Yeah. Which is really, again, just awesome. And I just, again, think of the number of people that we could absolutely wipe this out in a heartbeat with how many good kidneys are out there and literally save hundreds of thousands of lives again, not overnight, but boy, within 6 to 9 months, man, you could almost eliminate the people that are in need of a kidney in the United States. Let's talk about post-process. So you got the surgery. I think that, again, it's just amazing. How did the surgery go? And I understand, I think it was Pete or somebody said they want you up and walking like immediately or as soon as possible or something like that. Can you just explain that process a little bit to us for you?
Sure. So I had my left kidney and it was a laparoscopic surgery. And it was, like I said, at 5:30 at night. So the very next morning, like early morning, they were like, all right, you're up. You need to start walking. So I was up and walking within hours after being wheeled back to my room after recovery, which I think is amazing, because that's really what we need to do, right? We need to get upright. Our bodies need to start moving again. It was not lovely. It hurt. And it was exhausting, but it was, of all of my athletic and physical accomplishments, that 2 minutes of walking is something I am most proud of.
Wow.
And it makes me emotional, because it's like, look what I just did. And my cousin is up and walking, and here I am walking. I'm upright and I'm moving when I just had an organ taken out of me. Mm-hmm. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Oh, no, that's okay. What's the next question?
Yeah, just when were you released then from the hospital? Like, how many days were you in the hospital?
So I had a little bit longer of a stay. My pain levels were pretty high, and I do not like to take any kind of narcotics. So it was just Tylenol. And I was in the hospital for 3 days. Okay. And I know that that's significantly different from even to now, because my surgery was 2016. So I was in the hospital for 3 days, and walking every single one of those days. And we had to drive down to Albuquerque because, like you had mentioned, I had my surgery in Colorado. Oh, yeah. But we had to stop about every 40 minutes so that I could walk for 10 minutes so that I wasn't going to get any blood clots anything like that. We could have flown, but sitting in the airport, sitting on an airplane, that I just didn't want to do that. So we drove so that I could get out and walk.
This is a weird question too. How do they decide what kidney they're going to take?
I was thinking the same thing.
Like left or right?
To be honest, that's never something I asked. I just figured they knew what they were doing. Right. They'll take the one that they feel is the best.
Yeah. I when you said that, I thought, how do they pick which one? Well,
there's different theories.
Oh, is there?
Yes, and I don't know if any of them are correct.
Okay, probably best not to spread. I do a good enough job as saying the wrong thing and doing the wrong.
I usually do it on purpose.
Yeah. So I think, man, I couldn't imagine wanting to fly back either. I would definitely pick the drive back and stop every 40 minutes or whatever I have to and walk for 10.
Well, because then you're in control of what you're doing too.
Yeah. So you get back home, and when you say you were in the hospital for a longer than normal, I think 3 days. I'm like, well, that's nothing. That's still not long. When I'm thinking of the process of people like putting this through their head, going, oh, she was in there for 3 weeks, or something like that. It's still only 3 days, longer than normal. It sounds like for most people. Mm-hmm. So you get back home. What's the recovery process back home look like then? Like, when did you go back to work? When did you start walking/running again? All of that.
So I immediately started walking every day, and I included my kids in the process because I wanted them to see how amazing our bodies are. So they would get on their little trikes and bikes, and it was like walk for 5 minutes, then walk for 10, walk for 15. I was just trying to get further and further every day. I couldn't do any kind of abdominal work because of hernias, and I couldn't pick up anything heavier than a gallon of milk, which is difficult if you have small kids because I couldn't pick up my son. But that's why I really wanted to involve them in the process so that they understood and they could help mom and what can we do. Let's not focus on what mom can't do. Let's focus on what mom can do. And so it was kind of fun because I couldn't vacuum or do anything like that. So that was kind of like my husband had to take on a little bit of those types of things around the house.
I'd be still using that.
Yeah.
He's like, huh, it was 2016. Come on.
I mean, I'm still using it on the lawn. There's a reason. I think my back hurts to mow the lawn. It worked.
But it was short-lived. That was for 2 weeks, just 2 weeks. But I was still able to drive. I was able to walk. I was able to cook. I was still able to do all of those normal things. I just couldn't pick up anything heavy. And then like I said, I walked just further and further every day. And at about 6 weeks, I was cleared to start running again. And I did a run walk interval back to return to running protocol, basically. And so I started with run for 30 seconds, walk for 2 minutes, run for 30 seconds. And I just built up every week, just added on a little bit more running. And at 14 weeks post-op, I did a half marathon. And it was the Duke City Marathon. And it wasn't my worst time. It wasn't my best time, but it was awesome. It was a sub 2 hour half marathon. And I was really proud of myself. And there were no limitations. There was nothing like, oh, I can do this, but I have to be careful because of. My body was good. It was wonderful. The only thing I really needed to be careful of was electrolytes. I needed to make sure that I stayed hydrated and just take in a little bit more water than before. But there were no limitations. There was nothing. There was just nothing that I thought, as, thinking you're going to be giving an organ to somebody, maybe your body's going to change a little bit and you're going to have some things that you can't do. And that just wasn't the case. I was back to normal.
The thing that comes to my mind is the hydration. We should be paying attention to our hydration anyway. And that's
Yes.
What's funny about that, because I do horrible.
I know, me too. I'm awful. I think about that. I think about because it definitely, these discussions have definitely made me think, man, I should just give one up. This is ridiculous. I don't need it, and give it up. Especially when you now speaking personally to 3 people that have said it's nothing. I mean, 14 weeks and you're back running a half marathon. I don't mean that it's nothing, but in my eyes, or in my mind, what I was thinking.
I mean, you've taken 6 months off as it is.
I know, right? It's no big deal. So
then you'd have an excuse.
I would. Well, that is amazing. And so basically, I'm assuming from then on, you're just building back up, going back to normal. And like what Pete had mentioned, it did not affect his running times down the road. It was back to normal, essentially. The only thing he said as well was hydration. He stays on top of that all the time now. Like he said, if you want to get to know your body, do the kidney donation because of all the tests they run. Same thing. But he said you are more aware and in tune with things by staying hydrated, things like that. And he said just stay away from Advil. You can't take Advil anymore. So,
yeah. Ibuprofen, any NSAIDs, we can't take because those are filtered through the kidney. And you obviously don't want to make your one kidney work any harder. But the only thing, like the fatigue, there was a lot of fatigue after donation. And I hope I don't paint the prettiest of picture. The recovery was painful. You're recovering from a surgery. It's just not any more than any other surgery. It's going to be painful. It's going to be a little frustrating, but it's very short-lived. Once you get past the 2-week mark, it's all right, let's do this. Let's go. And the hydration obviously is big. And then, yes, being aware of your body. I became so aware and in tune with what my body was telling me. And I did turn to plant-based also. And I don't know, there are so many different opinions on this, medical opinions, but I had read that plant-based is a lot easier. Plant-based proteins are easier for our kidneys to filter and to break down. So, and it just made me personally feel better to do more of a plant-forward diet. But I did my first marathon ever post-donation, and it was 10 months after donating. And to be honest, I have done more physically, more accomplishments physically post-donation than I ever did before. I've done more. The fastest times I've ever seen have been in the last few years.
That's awesome. And so, yeah, let's jump into that. The way in which the way this discussion right here came about was you ran into Mitch doing the Grand Canyon rim to rim to rim.
Yep, in passing.
Yeah, in passing.
You know Laura, who we talked about at the beginning, and Christy.
Yep, and Jack.
And Jack from the Colorado Springs area. And how long post?
When was that 2021 that we did that then? I'm guessing. Right? Because 2022,
it was post-COVID, the year after COVID.
2021, because the COVID stuff was still going on.
Yeah.
I remember going into the lodge and you still had to wear a mask and all
That's
that
right.
stuff.
So yes, it must have been 2021. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's just talk about that a little bit. What was your experience doing rim to rim to rim? This would have been your first quote-unquote ultra, I'm guessing?
Ultra distance.
Yep. This was the longest distance I had ever accomplished. I was very excited about this. It was actually my idea when I went to my husband and said, I want to do this. This is going to be so great. I really am a big dreamer. I dream big. I have big goals. I have big passions. And I like to challenge myself. And I thought rim to rim to rim would be perfect. So a huge group of us went down there and we were so excited to do this. And to be quite honest, this was like the worst experience of my life, running wise. But it was my husband's best. It was very beautiful in that I really found where my runner heart beat the loudest. And It's not on the trails. It's not long, drawn out, eating food as I'm trying to get myself up a big hill. I found out that I really do love the roads and I like to run fast, but I'm so proud of myself because I know that I can get through anything now. Like in my fastest marathon, I know that you're not going to die because you didn't in the Grand Canyon.
No, I love it that you're saying it that way because it's not a joke. Like it's not something that you just say, hey, I'm going to go do this and it sounds wonderful and dreamy. It's hard work.
Yep.
Like it is.
It really is.
It's no joke. And if you look at it, it's a reverse mountain. You're going down. You don't just quit. You got to get back out. And I think a lot of people miss that. Like it's badass in that aspect because once you go down to the bottom, there's no free rides back out. Like it's up to you to get back out. So it's hard.
I mean, so two things. Number one is, what do the signs say? You shouldn't go in and out.
You shouldn't go to the river and back in a day.
River and back in a day. So that would be for the casual tourist coming and visiting, right? And then you've got those that might do a 5K every now and then or something like that a year, who probably going to the river and back or doing maybe one way would be a huge event, right?
Yeah, one way is still a big event.
Yep. And then you've got the rest of the people that are kind of in a different, like, kind of crazy doing the rim to rim to rim, which is, for those that don't know, it's down to the bottom, up the north. Well, I guess, do they do it both ways?
You can do it both ways, but most people will start at the south rim.
South to north, you go up to the north side, you go back down, and then back up to the south side.
So you go across the river twice.
Which is roughly almost 50 miles.
It's like 48 miles.
48
and
miles.
I think you did 50 because you ran the road a little bit before you hit the canyon.
Yes, my friend that I was with, it was her 50th birthday that year, and she wanted to do 50 miles on her birthday, so it was all her fault. We did over 50 miles.
Okay. Of course.
But it was, what an incredible experience. I know that I didn't have the best. My body just started to shut down. I was not as prepared as I needed to be. And it was very humbling because I'm strong. I take really good care of myself. I strength train. I am not a stranger to longer distances. But that is a different kind of environment. Those are different conditions, and it's better to go in with eyes wide open. And some people just, that's not their jam. And I found out that it's not mine. While other people that I went with, like for my husband, for example, he fell in love with those distances. So I learned a lot and I took home a lot. And I know that I really am capable of a lot more than I ever thought I was, simply because of that experience.
If I'm putting some together for 2024, you might
send your husband and not
he'll
go.
Go, but you'll cheer him. Because I want Lewis to do it. Because I do think I agree. It's not for everybody, and it is hard. I don't like when you tell people about it, it's like, okay, you did that. Oh, and my daughter's, for my middle daughter, my middle child, her 21st birthday, they went to Arizona and they stayed, and my wife went with her and they did some hiking and stuff. And they went to the Grand Canyon and they hiked down like a mile. And my daughter had a horrible time just climbing back out. And my wife said to me, she's like, it gives me perspective. I can't believe you went all the way across and back. Like, I didn't think about it until we started hiking down and like how hard it was just to come back up a mile.
Yes, that last trek up is, I just can't. I honestly am just shocked I made it. I did that, but it's truly amazing because you get to see areas of the Grand Canyon that most everybody else never gets to see. The wildlife, the flowers, and the plant life. It's unbelievable and magnificent, and even more magical than any picture or even standing at one of the rims could ever offer.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, maybe it'll have to be on our list for next year, because I turned 50. So maybe we'll have to go and do the 50-mile route. Add a couple more miles. Come on. You're going to take me out there. We're going to do the whole thing.
Yeah.
The extra 2 miles on the road.
Dang it, Susan.
So, well, I think it is interesting. I'm glad that you, well, first of all, let's be clear. It had nothing to do with the kidney donation, as far as like why you didn't have a good experience with, let's call it the second half or whatever miles. You just don't necessarily care for that kind of a race, which is your ultra distance type races, but that one was on another level because of the elevation that you gain.
And there's no bailout. Like, you're on your own. Like, there's no way out but you.
Yep.
You mean you can't stop at the aid station at the river and get a ride out?
Hopefully you can catch a ride with a mule.
At the river.
I do think it sounds amazing because for me, the thing about me is I actually do, of the running that I've done, my favorite is the trails, and my favorite is suffering on the trails. Deep in a race, I like heat. I love being in the middle of, the depth, the places where I have went in my head, and for me, talk to God, have been suffering, the worst suffering on a trail at mile whatever, 70, call it, of 100, going, God, just help me get through this, or just like peacing out from the race itself, because you can do that in those events. You can peace out from everything and just be in your own head, just following some flags on a trail. And I have found, for me, that has been, I fell in love with that. Much different than Brandy did.
So, I mean, we could talk about Grand Canyon forever because I love the Grand Canyon. I mean, that will always stay there. But since then, I follow you, and you've done a really fast marathon since the Grand Canyon too. Like, you smoked it. Like, you did all the training, and I mean, obviously, you're not slow because I think you smoked. A Boston qualifier. I think you were way ahead of that based on that.
Yes.
And you didn't get to run Boston? I don't believe, right? Did you get to go to Boston or not?
No. So I qualified for Boston. So just to back up a little bit, that marathon I did 10 months post donation, I was on track to qualify. And so that became like my goal. All right, I could do this. I just hadn't given myself that credit, I suppose. I wasn't expecting to be that quick already. It didn't work out that year. So I went back to train for another marathon, and I did the Donna. That's down in Jacksonville, Florida, just to plug that because it's a great marathon. In 2019, I'm sorry, 2019. And I did, I qualified for Boston that year, but that was the 2020 qualifier. And as we all know, that was the year that it didn't happen. I did run Boston that year, but it was up in Colorado Springs at 7,000 feet.
Not the same.
In Boston.
The only way that it was ran that year. Yeah.
Yes. And then I thought about just putting all of that aside. I was getting tired of constantly trying to chase a qualifier. And, but in last year, I got the bug to start training again, and I felt faster than ever. And I got a coach, Cup of Tea Fitness, and they worked really hard with me. And I ran the Duke City Marathon in October, and I ran a 3:17 marathon.
October of just this last year.
This last year.
Oh,
yes.
So that didn't qualify for this year's Boston anyway.
No, so it's 2024, which is such a blessing. It's like a little blessing in disguise, because I wouldn't have been able to go to Boston this year, unfortunately, because I broke my ankle.
So we want to talk about that too.
So what was your finish time? 3:17?
3:17.
Oh my gosh.
3:17.
Well done. That's incredible.
Yeah.
And so the plan would be then to go in 2024, which means you'll sign up in September of this year. But let's talk about we do want to talk about, we understand you're injured right now. Like, how'd you break the ankle and where are you at right now?
Well, so I did get a 3:17 at that marathon, but that was not my goal. I actually wanted to do a sub 3:10. So I was trained, I was ready. It was just a bad day. It was raining really hard. I could make so many excuses. Right. It didn't happen that day. So I felt that I was ready though. So my coaches and I decided to sign up for another marathon that would have been in early February, and down in Arizona. And so I just started training again, and I wanted to do a sub 3:10, and I was December 16th. It was my first day of break. I'm a student actually in college. I've gone back to school, and it was my first day of break. And Laura, who we've mentioned, and I went on just a very easy run. It was very cold that day and icy. And it's a path that we run all the time. I train there. It's one of the flattest parts of the city. We turned onto a bridge, and she slipped and I slipped, and I suffered a trimalleolar fracture. I broke every stabilizing bone in my ankle and tore all the ligaments along with it. And still shocked to this day that this happened. I mean, this was a very significant break. I couldn't walk. I now have a lot of hardware. I've got 10 screws, a plate. They had to repair ligaments that I literally tore in half. I was non-weight bearing for 7 weeks, in a boot for an additional month. And so here I am about 5 months later, and I am returning to run. I just started walking in April, basically, like purposely walking. I did work out every day, though. 1 week post-op, I was doing Pilates, non-weight bearing exercises. I was wiggling my toes.
I was following you on that, and I love how you still went after it. You didn't shut it down. I mean, it still had to be depressing, I'm sure, but you still made the best of it. Like, obviously, I think you were losing muscle in one leg and you were just still doing what you could. But you couldn't drive either, though, I don't believe, right?
I couldn't drive either. This was the most life-altering event. I've had surgeries before. I had the kidney donation. My family and I, we know what the surgery thing looks like. It was nothing like this. Absolutely nothing like this. I was basically bedridden for about a couple of weeks. And I'm a social person. I don't like to be by myself. I like to go on group runs. I like to talk to other people. And I couldn't drive. And we have 2 kids that are very involved in sports in school and need to be driven all around town. And so it was very depressing, and I wasn't going to just sit in bed. There was no way I was just going to sit in bed and be depressed and let my body just rot. So I found great YouTube channels. Another plug, Carolyn Jordan's awesome. But she has no impact, non-weight bearing exercises that you can do. And so from week 1, I just started keeping my body strong, doing them every single day.
That's awesome. Well done on that. Well, I hope that things between now and next April, everything lines back up and you are running strong because you don't have to do anything until next April, essentially. I mean, as far as like a race.
Right. And you are running a little bit now, right? Like a mile maybe?
I have returned. So today was a big day. I'm doing walk-run intervals, and I'm running for 4 minutes, walking for 3, and I was able to run 4 4-minute intervals. So 16 minutes today I was able to run. And not that pace is a big deal, but I am running at like between a 9:30 and 10-minute pace, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
And can you feel it? I mean, how does it feel on your ankle and foot?
It feels really great. My recovery has actually been really remarkable. My range of motion is almost entirely back. My dorsiflexion is wonderful. It's just like anybody else's, that are any healthy person, I suppose. You know, I can stand on one leg now. It really is coming together, and it doesn't hurt when I run. It's a little bit scary. I think it's more of a mental issue than it is a physical.
At least we're coming into the summer months now, so you don't have to you don't have to worry about sliding on stuff unless it's just loose gravel or something like that.
I don't think I'm going to be running in the winters for a very long time.
I feel the same way. You know, I was talking to friends. It seems like I always get hurt in the winter. I always take pride in getting out on the roads anyway. But I tell you, it's not worth being down for that.
Right.
That's the problem.
No. And you don't I never expected, like, you slip and fall. You know, Laura fell that day too. She fell along with me and she hurt her hip a little bit. Like, that's what you expect. You just pop right back up and it's fine. And so I don't know if I'll ever, I'm a little weary of ice.
Oh, I bet. I can't imagine.
And the way I know Laura too, if it was me falling, she'd be like, suck it up. It doesn't look like it hurts. So I don't, or she noticed right away.
Yep. She was so funny because she was like, well, I heard that sprains hurt more than breaks.
She was looking at the positive side.
Trying to be supportive. No, I think it's broken, Laura.
Then that's what I told her. I'm like, I'm fairly certain this is like, it looked like somebody had put 2 golf balls on the side of my ankles, like into my sock.
Oh, no.
So,
well, I'm glad it's all put back together.
Yes, it is all put back together. And I actually did sign up for a marathon that's in November. Just to give myself a little bit more of a challenge.
Yeah, what one?
Salina in Kansas.
Oh, okay.
Sounds flat.
Yeah, Kansas.
It is. And, you know, if you guys want to come out to Salina and run a marathon in November, I'll be there.
I have Kansas already.
Yeah. Well,
Oh.
I don't know. I guess, Kansas is not my first state that I think of and going to run a marathon.
I know.
It wouldn't be for me either, to be honest. And I had a friend that was like, "Hey, there's a marathon and it's only $5." It was $5.
Okay, now
Sounding better now. If
Yeah.
we can get the transportation part covered.
yeah, if we can get transportation for like 10.
Because I'm trying to talk Lewis into 2 states in, what was it, September? I think that the end of September.
out in whatever east somewhere.
Yeah.
East somewhere.
New Jersey and New Hampshire.
Yeah. So who knows? I doubt
It'd be a warm up for Kansas.
Yeah.
There you go.
Cool. I did have one question on the kidney thing again. If we could go back to that one quick second here before we kind of wrap some things up. Well, I'm curious, who pays for all of this?
The recipient's insurance.
Okay.
So the donor, I had zero expense.
That's what I was
I did have to drive myself there and those things, but the hospital stay, all the testing, anything related, even post-donation, I thought I had a hernia at one point. I did not, but I went to get an ultrasound done, and that was all. Everything is covered if it's anywhere within the kidney donation process.
Oh,
Gotcha.
okay.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Because again, another reason that it really is nothing to the donor. And I keep saying nothing. I don't mean that it's not a big deal. It's a big deal, and you do have to go through some things. And I really appreciate, Brandy, you sharing that. Yeah, no, it's painful. You're gonna feel it, for a couple of weeks. It's gonna be uncomfortable, and you're gonna work through that process. But that's really, man, when you look at 2 weeks over your lifetime, that's nothing. It's a blink of an eye.
Yes.
It's for what it does is saving a life essentially, because without it, it's as you said, with the dialysis and things like that, it's not great. And so appreciate you sharing that. Well, man, thank you, Brandy, so much for joining us and just going over all this. I wish you all the best on the recovery, getting back out and running. You obviously are very experienced with post-surgery
Post-injury.
build back up.
Right.
So I hope you have a great November marathon, but Boston experience. Is this your first Boston next year?
It will be, yes.
Yeah.
I finally get to go to Boston.
Well,
Yeah.
enjoy the experience. And regardless of how well that race goes, I can assure you, if you just remember that you're at Boston, it will be an amazing time. It really will.
Absolutely, yes.
Well, thank you again for joining us.
Thanks. I don't have any other questions though.
Yeah. Well, that is going to wrap up this week's episode. Be sure to check us out on Facebook. Check us out on YouTube now. We've got things. We have the podcast there now. That's fully solidified now, and we're hoping to get some more stuff there. Don't have it there yet, but we're working on it. And that's going to wrap up this week's episode of the I Don't Know Running podcast. Be sure to tune in next time as we share more about what we just don't know.
Until then, happy running.